On Tech News Today, YouTube is reinvented for mobile and for 360-degree video. Plus, Amazon's cloud saves the company from massive losses. And Hollywood wants Google to remove pirated movies on their own servers. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, July 24th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100-plus job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace that connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. Visit Prosper.com/twit and receive a $50 Visa gift card and you get a loan. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Welcome to the show. My name is Mike Elgan, and our co-anchor today is Mashable Senior Tech Correspondent Christina Warren. Christina, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm great. It's the end of a very hot week in New York, but it's fortunately not that hot right now outside. It's finally cooled down a little bit, which is good because the weather is beautiful. So hopefully I can actually spend a little bit of time outdoors when it's only 84 degrees and not like 100 degrees.
Yeah, I lived in New York for about a decade, and I desperately miss New York City, but I do not miss New York summers. They can be sticky and miserable. I don't know what it is, but you'd never experience heat like, you know, New York and Long Island in the summer. Wow.
I will say Atlanta in the summer is worse. Atlanta in the summer is worse. But you're right. No, this summer, but we had some Atlanta days like earlier this week. But no, it feels like 82 outside. There's a little bit of a breeze. It's going to get down to 70 tonight, which should be lovely. So it's like one of the nice summer nights. So it's good. It's a good thing.
Sounds like it's going to be cool. And speaking of things that are cool, I'm sorry, that was a horrible transition. YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki yesterday unveiled new mobile apps for both iOS and Android and a new mobile site for YouTube. The new apps enable you to watch vertical videos full screen and get better recommendations. She also said YouTube would be emphasizing 360-degree immersive videos and ads. The first 360-degree YouTube ad hit this week. Wojcicki also revealed that YouTube gets 1 billion monthly viewers and that daily use of YouTube is up 40% over last year. Best of all, for content creators, she said, the number of YouTube video makers raking in six-figure salaries increased by 50%. Wojcicki spoke at the annual VidCon YouTube annual fan convention. Christina Warren, how do you like my pronunciation of Wojcicki? I think I'm the only person who says it right.
I think you are. And no, that's impressive. But it's also impressive what YouTube is doing. I mean, she's been a fantastic leader of YouTube, I think. You know, was the first when she came in, really, I think, kind of giving it some of the stewardship and leadership it didn't always have from the Google end. I think being someone who's been with Google for so long, I mean, since the very beginning, it wasn't at her garage that Larry and Sergey were starting it in, I think has really helped the platform. And I think it's great. I mean, doing just having the player for vertical video, that in and of itself really, I think, will improve the experience for so many users. It's good stuff. And YouTube, it's funny, it's like all the competitors that are coming out, you know, they're facing real challenges from Facebook, right? Because Facebook, even though they haven't really announced the monetization strategy, is getting tons of views with video. Twitter's getting into it. There's Vessel from Jason Keeler, the former CEO of Hulu. You've got other platforms out there, but YouTube is still king when it comes, especially when it comes to user-generated content, and especially when it comes to, as you said, you know, YouTube stars who can make, you know, 6-7 figures. There are very few other platforms where people can do that on those platforms if they're not already an established name. And YouTube is one of the rare sites that can kind of create established names in this VidCon-like world. It's VidCon is I wish I was there right now. Actually, it seems like an amazing time, because it's really this great, you know, combination of all these video stars that have kind of exploded over the last few years. I
had the very same thought. It's in Anaheim, and I thought, why aren't I there? And yeah, some of these people are making so much money. I'm thinking about starting my own like hair care product channel on YouTube. Just break in millions of dollars. Why not? I'm sure the kids will love it. You mentioned the elephant in the living room, of course, which is Facebook.
Yes.
And Facebook this week rolled out a new like subtle feature where when you go to put in a link to a YouTube video, it's like, are you sure you want to link to YouTube? You know, if you just upload the video to Facebook, lots more people will see it. It'll be so much better and everything will be great. Oh, you don't want to link to that horrible YouTube. So they are locked in this incredible battle for eyeballs.
And what's interesting is that it took them so long, right? I mean, if you remember in the old days, to embed a Facebook video, you used to have to go through a million. I mean, you used to have to, you used to have to make a custom iframe, and it was this convoluted process. Now they finally have embed codes. Not only that, what I've noticed, and this has been very recent since they've really been pushing their video initiatives, is that I see people even on Twitter sharing video links that go to Facebook. Yeah. And that's something I never would have expected to see before. But I think that, you know, for a lot of brands and for individuals, Facebook, I think, has the potential to get as many or even more views. I think that the difference is that because YouTube is so focused on its community and its discovery mechanisms, unless Facebook kind of creates its own little portal of that sort of thing, YouTube is still always going to be bigger there. And in that regard, I don't know if you could build the sort of business or lifestyle business that some of these YouTube stars have built on Facebook video, even if they had the advertising methods in place, which they don't. I just don't think that the audience works the same way.
Yeah, and YouTube has a huge head start. And for what it's worth, I upload this show everywhere, YouTube, Facebook, you name it. And in general, Facebook's video quality is horrible. Of course, if you click the HD button, it gets slightly better. YouTube's isn't great either. I mean, when we publish natively, we do 60 frames per second, super HD, and it looks beautiful. And you can't get beautiful video on either well, you can on YouTube. If you just do an upload, it's not going to be beautiful. There are ways to do it. On Facebook, there's no way that I'm aware of to have really super high def video. But as Instagram proved, the general public generally considers video and photo quality to be secondary to almost every other consideration. It's really not that important to people. So I'm sure Facebook will make a ton of money and get a ton of eyeballs. And, you know, to a certain extent, all they have to do to get more viewers of videos is just change their algorithm, and boom, it happens. Show
people more videos. That's right.
Yeah. Got some more news for you coming right up. But first, let's talk about ZipRecruiter. You know, everybody thinks that the coolest thing about ZipRecruiter is the fact that you can post to 100+ job sites with a single click, including social networks like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Google+. And in fact, that is a really, really great feature. But the problem is, as anyone who does a lot of hiring knows, man, once you get those things out there and you get a great response and you get flooded with all kinds of resumes, now you're in real trouble. If you got dozens or hundreds of resumes, that takes huge amounts of time to go through and sort through just to figure out which are the qualified and which are the underqualified candidates. Of course, every candidate is going to make the best possible case they can. So on the surface, every candidate looks good. But that's not really true. You have to spend quality time going through them. What's great about, and I think the greatest thing about ZipRecruiter, is they will help sort them for you. So if you get a whole bunch of candidates that are not qualified according to your criteria, they'll sort of put them off to the side and show you the really great ones. They'll basically say, hey, look at these guys, look at these women. These are the people you want to hire. Spend your time on these folks, and that's going to save you time. As I've said before, the biggest problem with hiring is that people give up. They get hiring fatigue. They get so tired of going through resumes and slogging through cover letters and interviewing that they finally just settle on somebody just to get it over with. That's not the right way to hire the best people. The right way is to go to 100+ job sites, have the best candidates automatically filtered for you, so you have the time and the bandwidth to really consider the best people. You definitely want to check this out. We got a user testimonial from a Dr. Robert Martinez, who is a happy ZipRecruiter client. He said, ZipRecruiter has been great at every level of service, easy to use, professional, and the support has been second to none. We're very selective in choosing our employees. It is very clear that ZipRecruiter is as well, and to offer such a great customer experience is awesome. So that is, again, a user testimonial for ZipRecruiter. You can try ZipRecruiter for free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Tech News Today. All right, well, in another story, Amazon beat expectations in their earnings call yesterday by reporting a quarterly profit of $92 million on revenue of $23.18 billion. Analysts expected Amazon to lose money again, and they surprised them by actually making money. Clint Finley is a reporter for Wired and joins us now. Welcome to you, Clint.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great, thank you. Now, it looks like Amazon has cracked the cloud. Amazon Web Services brought in $391 million in profits on revenue of $1.82 billion, which means, does it not, that cloud services are subsidizing huge losses on the sale of books and other products?
It might mean that. I would have to dig deeper into those numbers. But a lot of the loss on the other side is probably coming from building out new things like more distribution centers that Amazon hopes will help them make even more money in the future.
But regardless of whether or not we can attribute, the entire profit to the cloud services or not, I mean, the fact that, 391 million on 1.82 billion in revenue, that's a pretty decent chunk of profit. I mean, that's showing pretty decent margins, despite the fact that Amazon has been engaged in these cloud price wars with everyone else. What are they doing with AWS that is so correct, that's so right? Like, what are they doing so right that's able to give them these kinds of results?
Wow, it's hard to say, but the economy of scale is probably a huge part of it. I mean, they have huge data centers. They've been focused on building these data centers for almost a decade now.
Right.
Whereas like Google or Microsoft has really only been trying to compete head on with Amazon for a few years. So Amazon's already been able to pay down some of their infrastructure investment. They only started breaking out the earnings for cloud stuff for AWS last quarter, and I suspect some of that has had to do with that they wanted to wait until they had kind of recouped a lot of their earlier investments in it. But it's impossible to know for sure. Besides
making money, were there any other surprises in their earnings call that caught you off guard?
Nothing jumps to mind, sorry.
That's okay. All right, well, Amazon is a fascinating company, partly because it's run by a billionaire genius who's got his own space program and his own newspaper and all the rest, and partly because they're so aggressive with pricing. I still would like somebody to figure out what's losing money. If the overall business makes 92 million, but the web services makes 391 million, that means there's a couple $100 million there in the red, where there's a subsidy of something going on, and yeah, I'm really curious about what that is, and it's a sensitive issue because of the anti-competitive charges, but for example, by the authors and so on. So Clint, I don't know if you what your general take is on Amazon's entire model. I mean, from what I can tell, they actually tried to break even. They tried to take every dollar they can and plow it into, as you said, future sources of revenue. Do you think that there's any place in the Amazon business plan that's vulnerable to charges of antitrust issues?
Oh, sure. I mean, the ebook publishing for sure. And I don't know. Apple is also facing pressure, I think, for the iBooks line. But I mean, Amazon really is the big dog in that space, and they are able to write their own rules for how the ebook business works, and so I think that they're definitely vulnerable there. Okay,
well, Clint Finley is at clintfinley.com, also wired.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at klintron. What's the source of that Twitter handle, Clint?
Oh, I mean, it's just my first name with as Tron.
Okay, perfect. All right, I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Clint.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Movie studios routinely ask Google to remove pirated copies of their movies from the Google search index. These requests have to be specific. The studios manually enter the links in their takedown requests. The thing is, sometimes these links point to some embarrassing locations.
Oh,
Owen Williams writes for The Next Web and joins us now. Welcome to you, Owen.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Now, are you in Amsterdam?
I am in Amsterdam. I would show you, but it's kind of like really bright outside. It's I'm right by a canal. It's pretty great.
That's awesome.
Not so bright.
Fantastic. So where are I'll let you do the big reveal. Where are these computers that some of these links are pointing to?
Please give us the address.
Assumedly, they're kind of on their own systems. So I assume in their offices they'll have they'll be running a torrent client to detect other people who are downloading torrents, and they're detecting their own torrent client and then just lazily submitting it to the Google takedown thing. It's just the most ridiculous thing. There's hundreds of pages of this, and it just goes on and on and on. And I assume that's what's going on, but it could be that they legitimately downloaded Jurassic Park.
No, I mean, I think it's great that the 1.27, .0.1, port 4000 is when they want to get banned. So do you think that these are legit copies of the movies that they're actually flagging as pirated? Because obviously these are movie studios, so it's possible that these could be legit copies that are on the servers. Or do you think that employees are maybe pirating them? Before you answer that, I will say my own experience from knowing a lot of people who work at movie studios. Let's just say I've been invited to many Dropbox accounts. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say.
I believe it. I can't speculate too much, but I would say that there's two possibilities, right? Let's be honest. Some of those guys are gonna have torrent clients on their computer and they download stuff. Of course, it's a movie studio. But I think probably what's happened here is they have to have the source file to match it on because they'll have to find IP addresses which are torrenting it, and so they generally connect to the torrent that's available on the Pirate Bay or something to catch those addresses. But it still doesn't make any sense.
Right. It's why would you submit that address, and why wouldn't you? Or I would presume in some cases they would have a third-party company do it, or maybe it would not be on their local work network. Regardless, it just shows once again, as we saw with the Sony hack, these movie studios aren't the best with IT.
Yeah, I think it just shows that their takedown requests, all they're doing is they're oh, well, here's a bunch of addresses, just delete them all. We don't want them there. And they're not even really looking. They're just oh, we're pretty sure there's something torrented here. And it's not really good. They're just kind of bungling a lot of stuff in there. And if they're not even checking their local hosts addresses, they're gonna they're obviously taking down stuff they shouldn't be taking down as well.
So it was a really cool article, a really fun story, and you get bonus points for the URL, which is the next web insider blah 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 / ha 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 ha. How many ha's are there? 7 or 8. Anyway, love it. Great stuff, Owen. Owen Williams is at thenextweb.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at the enviable handle of OW. Thanks again for joining us, Owen. Yeah, all right.
See you later.
A report on Windows Central by Editor-in-Chief DanielRubino found that Microsoft's upcoming flagship Lumia Windows phones have some unexpected features. Daniel joins us now. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. Now, 2 of these devices have, I believe they're 2, have iris scanners, which, you see in some Chinese phones. You don't see them on big flagship phones from the big companies. How will these iris scanners work, and what will they be used for, do you think?
So the iris scanner is a part of Windows Hello, which is part of Windows 10, and it's this new authentication system used for unlocking devices. So you can use it right now on Windows 10 with an Intel F200 camera. And what that does is basically it's facial recognition. It uses 3D, IR, and then the actual camera itself. And all you need to do is look at it and it unlocks your computer. And it does this in about a second. It's actually very fast. So it's part of this new realm of technology that's starting to enter the mainstream. So this is going to be a case of the phones that Microsoft's been putting on there. And it's been rumored for a while that they're doing this, but we do have confirmation now that these will be part of these devices. However, from what I understand, right now, they're not going to be part of the device when it first launches. The hardware will be there, but there'll be a software update needed a bit later, probably a month or 2 out, to actually enable the feature. So it goes to show you just how new this stuff really is.
So you also wrote that the Lumia 940 and the 950 XL devices will have a PIN, which will be sold separately. So how does this work? And is there going to be a compartment on the phones that you can store the stylus like you can with the Galaxy Note?
So from what I understand, it's actually only part of the 950 XL, which sort of makes sense. It's a 5.7-inch device, a little bit larger, so you can actually do writing on there. The pen itself is just like the Surface Pen, at least from the images I have seen. So it's the exact same thing, which sort of makes sense. They're recycling these things from the Surface Pro 3, the Surface 3, and they're going to probably use it for here. As far as being able to store it on the device itself, no, it looks like it's going to have to clip on the outside. So if you ever use a Surface Pen, you'll know it's a rather chunky pen. It's meant to be like that to actually sort of feel like a real pen, as opposed to the classic stylus that we used to use on PDAs.
Now, for some reason, Microsoft has gone down this rabbit hole of using, what's the name of that movie? Wizard of Oz references in their code names, which makes sense, I guess, to a certain extent, because some people call Seattle the Emerald City, which is near Redmond, which is where Microsoft is headquartered. Anyway, what is this accessory that's codenamed Munchkin?
Yeah, so Munchkin's kind of interesting. We've been hearing about Continuum on Windows Phone now a while, since the build events back in, I believe it was March. So Continuum is going to allow you to basically connect your phone up to a display, including a mouse and keyboard. And these universal apps that are part of Windows 10 scale up. So if you're using Windows 10 right now for PC and you use the Outlook app, it's basically the same app that's on Windows 10 mobile. And so although on the phone, it's going to be in a very much vertical orientation, when you plug it into a display, it then scales up to a full display size. This device is basically just like a dock. So like the Surface Pro 3 has one and the Surface 3 has one as well, where you just plug it in and now you can have a display, mouse, and keyboard. So this device allows you to plug in the phone through the USB Type-C connector, and then you can use the phone on a larger display with mouse and keyboard. What we've seen so far with Continuum on phone, though, you can only use one app at a time, so it doesn't really fully multitask yet, but this technology is still in development, so it's going to be interesting to see how it comes along.
Are there any other cool features or specs on the phone that you can share with us?
So, mostly the specs that we reported yesterday are going to be the finalized specs. It's got a Quad HD display, which is pretty high resolution. It's going to be the highest resolution yet for a Windows phone device. Other than that, though, we're talking Snapdragon 810, which, it's been on the market for a while. It's not exactly cutting edge, but if you ever use Windows 10 Mobile or even the Windows Phone 8.1, you'll know it doesn't really require a lot of processing power. As far as any other secret stuff, right now, it's just going to be the Windows Hello and Continuum, I think, are going to be the big selling points for these devices, but they're also extremely thin. I hear they're 7 to 8 millimeters as far as wideness, and they also have very large batteries in them. But the batteries are extremely thin, but they're replaceable. So it sounds like to me that Microsoft's been kind of bent on undoing a lot of what Nokia has done wrong in the past. Nokia did a lot right with the Lumia line, but they've always been sort of chunky, heavy devices.
They're like bricks. I mean, they're super great, but they're bricks. You can throw them, against the floor. I've literally dropped 920s, 930s on the floor on brick or hardwood floors, and they're fine. But that's not necessarily something you want in your pocket.
Yeah, and so some people actually really appreciate that. But yeah, these phones I hear are just very thin. They're very light. They have removable covers. It basically does everything people want. So for instance, it has 32 gigs of internal storage, but they also added the micro SD option, giving up to a nice 128 gigs of extra storage. And that's something we haven't seen traditionally in their flagship phones, where they only give you one or the other, and it's kind of frustrating. So these devices look like they're maxing out in all the right areas. They're going to be thin. They're going to be light, high resolution displays, fast processors, and then you get the iris scanning, which is going to be really interesting to see how it works. It's supposed to do it in less than a second, and if what we've seen so far with Windows Hello for PC is any, is accurate for that, it should be pretty accurate or representative of what the final product will be like.
Now, if you can take off your scooper hat for a second, put on your analyst hat, what do you think Microsoft needs to do to become a significant player in the smartphone handset business? Are these phones going to do it? And if these won't do it, what will?
That's a $1 million question.
Yeah.
These devices will do one thing, which is they'll get Windows Phone back into the headlines. I think these devices will be well received. I think they're going to be reviewed well. I think it's going to spark a lot of interest. Now, Microsoft has talked about cutting back on carrier relations where it doesn't work out. I've heard so far Verizon was one of those. Now, in the U.S., I've only heard AT&T's picking up the 950, but not the XL. So I think these devices will have a limited run in, say, the United States. However, since they have universal radios on them, part of the 810 and 808 chipset, chipsets. They can be sold direct by Microsoft. So we may be seeing sort of like a Nexus approach where they are able to sell directly to customers and they can just throw in their own SIM card and use it on any network except for CDMAs. In that sense, you're going to have that limited carrier availability in advertising. Microsoft's going to have to probably do the bulk of advertising themselves. And that's definitely a lot of pressure. The other end, of course, is getting the right apps back onto these phones. With the Universal Windows App Platform, they definitely have their best chance of doing that, along with the Bridge apps, which allows developers to bring iOS and Android apps over to Windows Phone and Windows 10 Desktop. But we have to yet see if developers are going to take advantage of those tools, how well they work. If they do that, though, Windows, they sold 8.4 million Lumias last quarter, which is not a lot, and yet it is a lot. So they are selling, if you're selling about 30 million phones a year, it's still a significant, portion of the market. And although it's not big in the United States, it is big in emerging markets like India and parts of Europe, including Italy. So right now, it's mostly about getting the U.S. excited about these devices. And I think if they're reviewed well and big websites do give it appropriate coverage, it may spark interest again.
All right. Well, Daniel Rubino is at windowscentral.com, and you can find a lot of really great stories and scoops there as well. And also on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino. Daniel, thank you so much for coming on Tech News today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. The Wall Street Journal is reporting in an exclusive that Comcast's NBC Universal is negotiating with Vice, BuzzFeed, and other new media companies in a push to gain younger viewers. One possible outcome is that Vice could get its own channel. Imagine a Vice channel. Christina Warren, I don't like anything Comcast does, but this is just amazing that they are going after this. I can't imagine, for example, a BuzzFeed channel.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. Honestly, I kind of could imagine a Vice channel. If you watch Vice's TV series that they do with HBO, it's actually fantastic. And I'm not a huge fan of everything that Vice does, but I actually find the TV show on HBO to be really good. Yeah. But I think that if you had, themed channels that way of those websites, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Having said that, it is weird because this is a weird return to what was happening in the late 90s in cable media, where you had cable stations based on websites. Heck, Leo, our twit father here, he got his TV start was on ZDNet, which then became Tech TV, or ZDTV, and then it was Tech TV. There were a number of different websites, or television networks that were based on websites. MSNBC was started as MS because the MSN part is from Microsoft Network. So it's weird to me that they're doing this because it does seem like such a throwback. At the same time, I can understand how they want to gain younger viewers. My big question would be, are you approaching this maybe the wrong way? Because younger viewers are increasingly not turning to television at all. So you're now expecting them to subscribe to cable to watch these networks because they have an affinity for the website brand. Wouldn't they instead just consume the content from those sites on YouTube, on Facebook, on other digital services, and still say whatever to cable altogether?
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and it's worse than just a throwback. If it was just a throwback, that'd be fine. But back in the day when Tech TV existed, people watched TV. Young people watched TV. There wasn't YouTube didn't exist then. So
exactly.
And so nowadays, you're absolutely right. What they're trying to do, they're trying to get people to abandon the new model and embrace the old model instead of themselves embracing the new model. That's really what they should do. They should be doing. And the future of TV is this video podcasting, and so they need to get on board, or they're not. I don't think they're going to make it. Well, we got some follow-ups for you. We told you Tuesday that Wired reporter Andy Greenberg helped demonstrate the hacking of a Jeep. In the demo, which was captured on video, 2 hackers took control of the Jeep remotely through a mobile data connection in the car's entertainment system. They even shut down the engine while it was on the freeway. Not particularly safe. Don't try this at home. Now, Fiat Chrysler is recalling 1.4 million vehicles to patch the flaw that enabled the hack. Christina Warren, this is journalism that's making a difference.
Yes, it is. Andy Greenberg is amazing, and that story was terrifying. Reading that story was terrifying, and frankly, this is bad news for the Fiat Chrysler to have to kind of make this announcement. Although they're doing this voluntary recall, what I think is really telling is obviously the fact that the only way you can patch these vehicles is by using a USB key, because they are just totally allergic to over-the-air updates. And that's the real travesty in all of this. There should be a way for these cars, especially the newer ones, the ones that are coming off the lines now, to be able to update over the air. Everybody has a smartphone. A lot of these cars have, some sort of 3G radio built into them. They have a way to connect to the cloud to get this information. You shouldn't have to download something on your computer, put it on a USB key and install it, or even worse, in some cases, have to go to the dealership to get something patched. That should not be the way it works. I think Tesla is absolutely, doing it right. But yeah, I mean, they're having to recall these vehicles because this is out there. I'm glad they're taking these precautions, though, ahead of Black Hat, where this exploit is going to be showed off in more detail.
I think if they want to do over-the-air updates, they need to contact these hackers. I bet they could do it.
Oh, I bet they could too. Yeah, exactly. It's like there's clearly a way people can hack into these things and can get in. If they can remotely do this, there's a way that you should be able to push the code out legitimately. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, we got some product update news. Twitter yesterday announced the availability of new tools that help their advertisers create ads to appear around special events. Christina Warren, this is great because, of course, Twitter is great for events like the Oscars or whatever,
right,
including holidays like 4th of July, whatever. But this will also be able to enable advertisers to get data on people, in other words, to pigeonhole or stereotype people based on the types of events that they watch. For example, somebody who's really into the Super Bowl and is all engagey over the Super Bowl is probably going to like certain types of products, as we know from television advertising. So.
Yeah, no, I think that it's a good idea. I mean, I think especially as Twitter kind of changes its focus to be more around these live events, and they're hiring curators to kind of have the best tweets that are coming from these things. I think to have ad units around that stuff too will work really well because, as you said, I mean, one of the best things to use Twitter for is around these events. Whether it's the Oscars or the Emmys, or on Monday nights when I live vlog watching The Bachelorette, which all of my tech followers, shockingly, a fair number of them actually enjoy. They don't watch the show, they just enjoy my commentary. But I think that being able to build, tools around that sort of thing when these big events are happening is great.
I have to admit that your The Bachelor tweets kind of catch me off guard sometimes. I mean, I pretty much follow a whole bunch of tech people, and it's all tech all the time on my feed, and then all of a sudden you're talking about something, and I'm like, oh, yeah, The Bachelor. That's right. Okay. That makes sense. I got it. All right. In product obituary news, FrontBack will close August 15th. This 2-year-old startup makes a photo app for taking pictures out of a smartphone's front and rear cameras at the same time. A picture of something plus your reaction to that something. The company gained 2 million followers and got nearly $4 million in venture funding, and they're just going to reformat those hard disks, and it's all over. Christina Warren, they turned down an acquisition bid from Twitter. They shouldn't have done it.
No, they definitely should not have done it. I think this is where I have to disclose. I'm almost positive, I'm not 100%. I think my CEO invested in FrontBack as a personal investment. So, but that doesn't have anything to do with Nashville. I think I would just feel like disclose that. But yeah, no, they should not have turned down that acquisition offer. I mean, it was a fun app. I used it a little bit, but I think that, they're trying to kind of build off of the selfie phenomenon that has continued to take over the world the last few years. It just didn't really catch on. It was fun to do once or twice, but it just didn't have that stickiness. And I mean, this is what's hard about these apps, is that you either achieve, I think, kind of social graph ubiquity early on, or you don't. And if you don't, it's really hard to gain that momentum. And if you do, then it's really important to hold on to it as long as you can. And that's why we see the services that succeed, your Twitters, your Facebooks, your Snapchats, your Meerkat and Periscopes. These are the things that have the potential, your YouTubes, that last, but you need to kind of grab that user base very, very quickly and continue to grow from there and go viral. And if you don't, even raising funding is not going to necessarily be enough to keep the company going. That's a great perspective, and I think one of us should write a column about that. I mean, it's really that is really the dynamic of the app world. You're either a superstar or you're nothing. And right.
So many, and they said this exactly, and when they were talking about closing this thing down, they said, people would try it and say, oh, that's cool, and then wander away and go, gravitate back to Instagram or whatever. And it's so many apps like that. I download so many apps myself. Same. And I like them. I just forget to use them. And if they're not so great that I don't remember to use them, if I can't remember to use them, or if I'm so overwhelmed with all the other apps, they're dead in the water. I mean, there's so many apps fall to that fate. So I'll leave it to you. You write the you write the column. All right. Okay. We're signing columns here. All right, we got some more news coming up very soon, but let's talk about Prosper. Money is good. I'm a capitalist. I like money, and if you want to start a small business, you're going to need a loan, and you don't want to go to the bank, and you don't want to borrow it from your mother. What you want to do is you want to go to Prosper because they are America's first peer-to-peer lending marketplace. They enable people to invest in each other's dreams, in each other's projects, in each other's goals. Essentially what you do is you go there and you set up and you say, I would like to borrow money for this purpose. And then an investor comes along and says, I like what you're doing there and I like what I'm hearing, so I'm going to invest in you. And they don't have to take the whole loan. They can just do pieces of it. It's great for investors, and it's great for people who borrow money. You can borrow up to $35,000 in as few as 5 days and use the money for, you can get a debt consolidation loan. You can get a home improvement loan, a car loan, a small business loan, a special occasion loan. You can get all kinds of loans, and it's much better than getting a loan through any other way to get a loan. They have 2 million members. They've facilitated more than $4 billion in money borrowed, and they've empowered 250,000 people. Now, for a limited time, Prosper is offering Twit viewers and listeners a $50 Visa gift card with your low-interest loan. You can get up to $35,000 in your account in as few as 5 days and a $50 Visa gift card. Go to prosper.com/twit for this special offer just for you guys out there who are fans of the Twit network. Got a big number for you, a huge number, 86. It's a huge number because that's a percentage. It's the percentage of Etsy sellers who are female. Etsy is an online store for handmade products, and the number comes from Etsy itself, which also said that about 30% of the sellers used Etsy as their sole source of income. Christina Warren, I thought Pinterest was the most female site on the internet.
No, I mean, I think Pinterest might have the most female users, but clearly Etsy has the most female sellers and kind of people making money off of it. This is great. I mean, I think this is actually really interesting, especially, I mean, I don't buy a ton of stuff from Etsy, but, I do oftentimes get weird little craft things. And I think this is really interesting. I would be curious to know, I guess this would be interesting in light of what happened earlier this week with the split of eBay and PayPal, if early on in eBay's tenure, if they had a similar split, or I'm curious what it is about Etsy that makes it so female centric, because 86%, I mean, that's a really big percentage. So that's but that's cool, especially since Etsy's such a big deal. Yeah.
And to the best of my knowledge, I think just about every seller is also the person making the stuff.
In most cases, yes. I mean, there has been kind of a trend in the last couple of last year or so where I've found anyway, more and more kind of like Etsy resellers. They're not supposed to do that, but that happens. And that happens with anything. But yeah, I mean, in almost all cases, they are the people who are making the product. Which is cool. I got a friend of mine for Christmas. I think the last thing on Etsy I got was Alana from Broad City. There was a rosary candle of her, which was fantastic. And so I got that for a friend of mine for Christmas.
Yeah, I think a lot of technology fans don't really see Etsy as a tech site per se, but there's tons of tech-friendly stuff. There's like all kinds of, iPad cases and, tablet holders.
Not only that. Yeah, and I think not only that, I mean, you think you have to look at how the infrastructure is built. The fact that this is this platform for selling and buying and inventory management and everything else, and that's very technical. I don't think you can't not call it a tech site. I mean, even though a lot of the things are handmade, there's certainly a lot of technology going into stuff. And not only that, I guess I would also say so much of the boom of Etsy has been fueled by 3D printers and technology for better printers that are available at home, whether it's for screen printing or anything else. Technology has made doing these sorts of crafts and kind of building your own things, making your own things a lot more viable than it would have been even 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely true. Well, in news, you can use Google rolled out yesterday an iOS version of its 360-degree animation Spotlight Stories app. The app lets you look around in 360-degree stories or animations by just moving your phone around. It's like a window into this invisible world. The technology for Spotlight Stories originated with Motorola's Advanced Technology and Products division, which was acquired along with the rest of Motorola by Google in 2011, and it first launched on the Moto X when Google still owned it. Google sold the Motorola phone group to Lenovo last year. Ironically, because Spotlight Stories works only on a few Android phones, the vast majority of potential users are now on iPhones. Right now, there are only 4 Spotlight Stories available. This 360-degree video animation story craze is just suddenly happening, Christina Warren. It's like Lots, we talked about YouTube at the beginning. We have all these augmented reality devices and apps coming out. It's really going to be a
the
360 degree
stuff that the Google showed off at I/O. Yeah, I know there's all kinds of stuff around this. I do think it's interesting that that this is coming out so long after they released the app for Android, even a couple of years now after they got rid of Motorola. But it's cool. And I think you're right. I think that this is one of those things where it's almost like now is the right time for this versus maybe when they started working on this a couple of years ago, maybe the market wasn't ready for it.
Yeah. And what's cool about that, I mean, Jason came into my office this morning, was showing me he couldn't, it wouldn't run. Jason, is that correct, on your Samsung Galaxy Edge? But it did on your Note 3. But he was showing it to me, and what's cool about these is that it's a combination of user control and user out of control. So the story progresses on its own no matter where you're looking, and you can look around within the story, whether it's an animation, a video, or whatever. And so it's a really cool, it's a really cool format. And I saw a video earlier this week of somebody sitting on the subway, and looking at 360-degree video, and he looked like a complete idiot, folks. Pro tip, don't do VR in public. Just saying.
But just looking at that demo, I have to say, like, just looking at that computer-generated creation of the subway station, like, that looks awesome. Like, that looks really fun. And I'm glad to see people playing with transmedia in this way. I think that's really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Jim Kaler in Denver, Colorado, who posted this picture on Google+. He's watching here in his shop where he designs electronic circuits. And
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, isn't it? Shows how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup or your electronic circuit workshop and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. Christina Warren, what are you working on these days? What's your next story going to be?
Well, I think now I have to write a thing about why social apps win or fail.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I have to write that op-ed, actually. No, I'm working on some stories about the Apple Watch apps and kind of what developers are really thinking about the platform, and so that should be out today or tomorrow. And we're gearing up for a bunch of big Windows 10 news because that obviously launches on Wednesday, and that's going to be a lot of what happens next week is all going to be about Windows. So
yeah. So what's the total number now of Apple Watch apps?
8,500 is what Tim Cook said on the call.
Okay. Probably not enough yet.
No. I mean, I think the developers I've talked to, some on and some off the record, have said, I wish that maybe we had waited until the WatchOS SDK came out to push WatchOS 2 SDK came out because the native capabilities are better and we have to kind of go back to the drawing board. And then I've heard from some other developers who've said, no, actually it was good to get an idea and a sense of how this works, but we're really excited by the native apps that will be coming and being able to actually run the code on the device because it's so slow when it's not running on the watch itself. So I think that we're going to be seeing most of the kind of real excitement around the apps building in September or whenever in the fall the WatchOS 2 is released because that's going to give developers access to so many aspects of the device itself in addition to just being able to run the code on the smartwatch itself.
Yeah, the biggest clue I think to the Apple Watch ecosystem is the complete absence of the smartest companies in Silicon Valley. For example, Facebook. Companies like Facebook went in there and said, Facebook on an Apple Watch, I tell you, I'm not seeing it. I don't know what it's all about.
I've heard from some people, like not publicly, but I've heard some rumblings from some people at companies that might rhyme with Facebook Faye that they do definitely have things in the works. But I think that again they're waiting for that kind of native tool kit to kind of come out before they're going to release it because the software advantages are significant. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it is interesting that a lot of those companies have kind of passed or haven't released them yet. But I don't think the fact that they're not there yet necessarily signifies that they won't be there eventually. I think especially as we just see, we're still all trying to figure out how big this market is and how much it's going to grow. But yeah, I mean, You're right. I think the biggest challenge that a lot of developers I've talked to have had is still figuring out what the experience needs to be on the watch, because a lot of them were designing apps first, on a simulator before the device came out, and now the device comes out, they change things. Now, it's more about trying to kind of get user feedback and figure out, okay, how are people actually using this, and what are the scenarios where it makes sense to have this glanceable, accessible information? How often should things appear? How much should this do? And what's the average amount of time somebody looks at something, et cetera, which is a very different things to kind of keep in mind than when you're developing for a smartphone or a tablet or a computer, where you can kind of guarantee that you have probably the full attention of the user most of the time, that they're kind of active in your app. It's a dedicated experience. This is one of those scenarios where it's very often you just glance and go, and you're not having somebody they're not taking the watch off their wrist to double to dual finger it. They're literally looking down and swiping and making millisecond decisions about what to do next.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit that probably 80% of my usage is news alerts from like New York Times.
Same.
Oh, another shooting, or it's like messaging, iMessage. Just text messaging is super useful. It works great.
It is. It's great.
Yeah, and that's really the main thing. And there are lots and lots of apps, and I'm really not that interested in what I've seen yet, generally, but I'm sure somebody will figure something out. It would be really cool. Film_girl on Twitter. Got to follow Christina Warren. Christina, thank you so much for co-anchoring today, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Thanks, Mike.
All right, bye. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on Yahoo, believe it or not, or you can choose another way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. If you're ever in the Bay Area, come on in and watch us as part of our studio audience. Just send email to tickets@twit.tv before you come in. You can also follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/TechNewsTodayTV. You can follow me at Elgan.com, and don't miss our other news show, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific every single weeknight. That is the Tech News Today. The show is produced by Jason Cleanthes and edited by Brian Burnett. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Monday.